Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're a little bit late with night 28 of the Orphan's Tales live reading. It was unavoidable as my child started crying, and I went up to his room to comfort him, and he had managed to completely remove his pajamas and was just sitting there like, now what do I do? Blankets, pajamas, sleep sack, the whole thing. It's just, I don't know what to do now. So I had to get him all back wrapped up and comforted and back in bed. So I'm glad I went up. He's never done that before. So I think he outsmarted himself a little bit. Yeah, so had to go be a mum for a second, but I am here to be author girl. Nice to see everybody. Hi Rabbit, hi Vixie. The music that you can hear playing, as always, is S.J. Tucker. You can find her albums based on these books at sjtucker.com, along with all of her other amazing music. I hope everyone's having as nice a night as you can. You know, it just keeps happening and being reality, doesn't it? Everyone in Maine has decided to just be a dick, I guess. I don't know. They're being babies about the schedule that the governor has put out for reopening, mostly because Fox News told them to be angry about it because Tucker Carlson has a house here, so he's angry about it. It's all just charming. So all of a sudden, what the governor of Maine does matters. Yeah, it's a mess. So I guess the upshot of all that is, like, hairdressers are open now, today. I don't know. I'm here with my hair uncut for you guys. So let's do our intro stuff. I know that this will end someday. Kim Stanley Robinson actually has a great article about all of this in the New Yorker today, if I'm allowed to recommend a New Yorker article. And I think he's absolutely right. I'm sure it will all end someday, but it just drags on. And I'm glad that we're all here. We have somewhere to be every night. I think this has kept me sane a little bit. At least I have to appear sane on camera. So, as usual, for legal reasons, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. You can find S.J. Tucker at sjtucker.com. You can find me at Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon, Cat Valenti also. We're sort of nearing up on the new stretch goal, so there's exciting new rewards on the other side of that if you're interested in subscribing. You can catch up at the archive at my YouTube channel, which is Cat Valenti Live. Somebody had Cat Valenti. What are the chances? And yeah, so then there's a tip jar in my Instagram profile and my YouTube profile, as well as my website, catherinevalenti.com. These are absolutely free, but if you are moved to toss a coin to your witch, it is hugely appreciated here on the evil old first of the month. Times are very tight for artists everywhere. But I know that times are tight for everyone, so thank you for even considering it, and thank you to Miles who tipped me last night. You are my heroes. Thank you so much, and I will thank you by name on the next stream. And you can ask answer. You can ask them. I will answer them at the end of the stream, but type fast because I tend to just duck out if questions don't come in, because it's awkward to sit here in total silence on a stream while people don't type anything in the window. I also forgot to get myself a drink again because I was flustered having to re-pajama my son. So bon voyage my throat. I'll fix it once the camera's off. Let's get into it. The Pale Girl's Tale continued. Snow looked up at Sigrid's wide face carefully as a deer nosing a blackberry bramble. I was born in Agenab, you know, she said softly. Sigrid nodded, but it was not precisely a confirmation that she had known. Then you are blessed as a spring babe. though I'm told it's no more than a shadow of the city it was. All cities are shades of what they were these days. Even Muran was once a metropolis. The towers of ice and silver, and queens who sat on tuffets of whale fur, drinking Ajan orchid wine from cups of seal bone. It was the capital of the north, 1,000 years past. Now it is a village, an outpost on a hostile sea, and only the stars recall. The afternoon had grown fat and red-faced, and the first thin wisps of twilight were waiting behind its jowls. Sigrid and Snow worked in unison now, like fiddlers plying their bows. "Clearly you joined the Sigrids," Snow remarked, keeping her eyes fixed on her friend's prodigious elbows. "Or it would be a great coincidence indeed that you are named Sigrid yourself." "Clearly. Yet," and here Snow blushed, flushing her colorless face with pink, "you don't swear by Saint Sigrid, you swear by the stars. I think it must have been a very strange road for you, from there to here." Sigrid's smile crept away from her face like a cat through a door left ajar. She shut her eyes, and for a moment Snow thought the hulking creature would cry. "I am not worthy to swear by her name," she croaked, her voice like 100 frogs lost in mourning. "I failed too often, too profoundly. I was supposed to accomplish a thing. The only thing I once thought I was ever meant to accomplish. I abandoned that when the wolves led me astray and into the city of light. And there I dropped a second destiny from my hands as though it burned me, and now I've no destiny left at all, only these nets to tie off like umbilical cords." Sigrid wiped her nose and shook her head like a horse discouraging flies. "So I lapse into the faith I happily held when I was young, and I swear by the stars, for I have yet to do much to offend them. Surely there is some Ajan god you whisper to in the dark." "I don't really remember. My parents died before they could give me a god of my own. I've heard that the Ajans worship the stars now, since the city died and all the monks left with their complicated new religions. They also say the Ajans eat caterpillar pies and fly on wings of horsehair and rose petals. I've stopped believing what everyone else says of my home. Anyway, I never heard of a saint being born on the barges." So flush in my pajamas. That is my power notification because I forgot to plug in the power cord. Oh, not such a great moment for art there. Wow. I guess it's a wonder in 28 days. I haven't done that yet. All right, let's roll back a little bit. Anyway, I never heard of a saint being born on the barges. That's because she wasn't a saint when she left Ajanab. It was much later that heaven touched her head. It's rarely places that birth us that see our true worth. Nor even, Sigrid added with a half-smile, the places that adopt us. But you may whisper to Saint Sigrid if you like. When you are alone and the stars are not speaking, she will not mind. She cupped the girl's white head in her large calloused hand. I had just gotten to Tomomo, had I not? Yes, Snow breathed. Go on. The tale of Saint Sigrid continued. Sigrid was certainly surprised to see Tomomo with a snout and ears sporting tufts of cream-yellow fur. Yet she seemed to be a pleasant enough beast, and her graceful hands rested on the rail like carefully arranged flowers. In fact, when Sigrid looked up from the water, the captain appeared just the same as she had. Her hair was bound as neatly, and her lips, grinning merrily, were just as thin and chapped as before, as any seafarer's lips would be. Only the water showed the fox's head. So I, too, am a monster. Of course, I am almost never discovered, prettiest of all possible barge girls. Only the sea's reflection shows this face. I have a natural disguise, whereas you, and here Tomomo eyed young Sigrid's chest meaningfully, must make your own. Yet, like yours, my mother could never bear to look at me. She would not let her eyes meet mine, even when I was a baby. She said she could see an unholy thing moving behind the iris, something watching her which was not her daughter. They like to tell us we are unholy, Sigrid. It makes them feel as though we cannot harm them, for surely they are as holy as we are dirty and foul. But of course, we can. Let me tell you how I first came to know that I was a monster. The tale of the good trick. My mother was particularly dutiful when it came to the binding of my feet, though by the time of my birth the custom was antique and unfashionable as stone tools in our country. I believe she thought if she could confine me to a litter for the remainder of my flower-strewn days, I would not be able to cause much mischief. Every night I loosened the wrappings and crept from my bed to splash naked in the garden mud. I'm sure she knew. After all, my hair was always damp and grass-scented in the morning, but she said nothing, swaddling my toes in raw silk with reproachful glances at my dirt-caked heels. One year, when I was no more than 10 or so, the fortune-teller Majo returned to the capital. This was a great event. Though she would not have been received in polite society, her wares were greatly desired by all the ladies of rank. Love potions, spells for a safe childbirth, or charms for a male child, talismans for luck and wealth, even incantations to change the weather from drought to rains. Her cart was a thing of wonder, shaped like a tiny movable house, draped with purple and red cloths, green under curtains and clanking silver chains, leather charms hanging like fringe from the miniature eaves, crane feathers and cat fur and unguents in clay pots issuing from its dark door. All this Majo carried on her back from town to town, though the shriveled, bony frame of the old witch seemed hardly equal to the task. When she stopped, stilts unfolded from the bottom of the contraption, and Majo would release the straps that bound it to her to ply her trade. After dusk, my mother and many other ladies with perfumed wigs and lacquered lips gathered in the pavilion like birds alighting on a fountain, squeaking in delight and waiting breathlessly for the telltale rattle of Majo's cart. I was brought in my litter, resting on those rose-colored pillows with my strangled feet propped up so the blood would drain away from them. Soon enough it came, singing its dilapidated song of pebbles underfoot and magic practical as cooking. The women pressed around, pushing their coins into Majo's hazel twig hands, pocketing her charms, their wishes, their scraps of paper to be placed beneath the pillow, their drafts to be swallowed at the next new moon. Somehow, through the crush of rustling robes and greedy hands, Majo caught my eye with her beady black one. She had only one. The other had been lost somewhere along her travels. Some said by a fight with a tiger, some said by a battle with a sorcerer, some even claimed to have scratched it out themselves when a spell had gone awry. The remaining eye clamped on me like a hand, and Majo's spittle-strong lips parted into a smug little grin. "What is your daughter's name?" she croaked to my mother, without needing to ask which of the powdered ladies she was. "My child is called Tomomo," Mother answered, her voice quavering. Majo clicked her tongue twice and produced a yellow pouch from her skirt, tossing it lightly in her hand. "Give her to me. I will give you this. Keep it always next to your skin, and it will produce 1 gold piece every time the cock crows." The women all caught their breath like fishermen snagging fat salmon and murmured among themselves enviously. After all, who cared about a useless girl child in the face of all that gold? My mother's eyes flickered furtively between me and the old witch. Finally, she agreed, snatched the yellow charm, scurrying back to the inner rooms with the rest of the women, full of this new wonder. She kissed me on the cheek, almost as an afterthought warned me to be careful. In a moment, Majo and I stood in the courtyard alone, save for the marvelous cart. She said nothing to me, but pulled a great copper pot from her cart and filled it with water from a pitcher so large I could scarcely believe she had it concealed in the folds of her skirt. When the ripples died down to nothing and the moon shone in the pot like a potato floating in soup, she indicated that I should look into it. Of course, I saw there my true face, my snout thin and sharp, my moist black nose, my ears flicking curiously in the night wind. Suppose I should have been frightened. My fur was so red, my teeth were so bright, but truly, I was relieved. This was the thing my mother saw pacing behind my eyes. I was not wicked, merely a monster. "There you have it, Tomomo, my girl." Majo patted my back in a strangely congratulatory way. "How did you know?" I asked. "We know our own. Can smell it. Scent of fur under skin like sugar dissolved in tea." She leaned over my shoulder, and her face floated beside mine in the water, a mangy, wrinkled face with her one eye slashed out, her lower lip scarred, and her jowls heavy as saddlebags. We grinned together. Her reflections bared their teeth, hers yellow and blunt, mine white and sharp. You belong to me now, little fox girl. If I had known sooner, I'd have spirited you away at birth. Found a den for you in the mountains. Now it is more complicated. You are much too old to join your cousins there. But it does not really matter so much. If you learn well, you may be able to find a place in the world, as I have. But always be wary of water. It reveals us. She poured the pot out onto the pebbles and packed it away into her cart, pulling wide leather straps over her shoulders and hoisting the miniature house onto her back. The wooden legs snapped up under its floor, and Majo sniffed the wind. A fox must always be alert and wakeful, she said sternly. Now that you know you are one, you have no excuse for laziness. I have enough to carry without your thrice-damned sedan chair. Get those ridiculous things off your feet. Happily, I ripped them off, chewing at the thick knots with my teeth. I nimbly walked alongside Majo with a heart so full and bright it threatened to burn through my robes. Where are we going? I asked. I'm taking you to a place where you can learn things. You've been sleeping on bedrolls soft as clouds lined in silk and feasting on fatted deer. But outside palace grounds, deer are clever and hard to catch, and bedrolls are too heavy to carry. There are other ways of living, and on the whole, they make for better women. A pity your mother never slept on a cave floor with leaves for blankets. I hope she enjoys her prize. By morning, all the cocks in the capital will have dropped dead. Dead as gold, and daughters unwanted. I gawked, unable to imagine so many dead roosters, or how the bent-old Bahag could have managed to leave a wake of strangled chickens behind her, but before I could ask, she was trundling away. I kept pace, though not easily. She was surprisingly fleet for her age, and I began to understand how she could travel from city to city with such ease. Before long, we were deep into the forest, where bamboo was thick around as a woman's waist. Before much longer, I could smell the sea, faintly, and damp began to weight my hair. When night had become cold and clear as pond ice, we had reached a long beach which was softer underfoot than sweet cakes. Majo spoke again. Her voice was no longer rough and scabbed, but high and sharp, unsurprisingly like the bark of a fox calling to her kits. Well, here we are. Where is it we're meant to be? I saw nothing but the long sea and the breakers foaming white and a slender pier stretching into the water like a skeletal finger. Majo rolled her eyes. A fox must be clever and self-sufficient. Put your educated mind to use and figure it out yourself. I brought you here. My part is finished. I am not a book. You cannot look up the answer in my index. Majo shifted under the weight of her house. I stood there on the sand, nonplussed, trying not to look like a simpleton. She rolled her eyes. You see the pier? It's the only damn thing around. Why don't you go see if anyone's living under it? Or shall I just do everything for you like your addle-brained mother? Majo released the cart straps from her shoulders and let the wooden legs unfold. She rummaged inside the hutch for a moment and drew out a thick cushion. Settling on it, she pulled a rice ball from her skirts and munched happily on it, gesturing toward the pier and urging me to get on with it. My cheeks stung as if switch-whipped. I certainly would not be shown as a spoiled brat in Majo's presence. I ran off after the rickety pier, tiny shards of seashells spraying up behind my pounding heels. Here we have a big, beautiful, full-page illustration of Majo and her cart and little Tomomo. And you can see the foxes in the water down there just a little bit. It stunk under the rotting slats. Algae and mussels and barnacles stuck to everything in wet clutches. Old crab nets, tangled and rusted-out clam buckets, held my hand over my face and nearly gagged. Few of those nets and buckets were empty of their last unfortunate victims. I saw nothing there which would be an errand worthy of Majo's attention, and much that would not be worth the attention of even a starving seagull. She was not wrong, I was sure. She could not be. And indeed, behind a well-chewed pillar, a dark shape scuttled by. I trudged toward it, my bare feet squelching in the tide pools and soggy sand, and soon I was knee-deep in the brine sea, splashing forward in the moonlight after a quick black shape. "Wait!" I cried, and to my amazement the shape did stop, turning its sleek head back over its shoulder. It was a large and well-fed otter. It rolled over in the waist-deep water and floated casually on its back, showing a wet golden belly against the rest of its slick dark brown fur. Its face seemed friendly enough, if not exactly welcoming. Its whiskers were almost as thick as a mustache. In its paws was a large abalone shell, a large abalone with several bits of shell chipped off. The otter struggled with it, glancing up at me from behind its stubborn prize. "What?" it said, and its voice rasped like dry kelp dragging over sand. I didn't at all know what to say. I was sopping wet and cold, and slime wriggled between my toes. I almost missed the swaddling bandages and all that muck. The pure water rippled around my thin robe as I stood like a child attempting to recite a poem she has not even tried to memorize. "Majo sent me?" I shrugged, trying to look as though I conversed with otters every day. I guess she sent me. She said to come to the pier, although it's very dirty. I think a great many things have died down here. "No doubt," said the otter, finally popping the shell open and ripping a thick piece of abalone flesh from the shimmering shell. "And each more delicate than the last." It chewed hard for a good while on the tough meat before speaking again. "Well, if Majo sent you, I suppose we'll have to make ends meet with a scraggly, skinny little fox, won't we? No worse than most. I am Racco, king of the otters. If you haven't brought me any shrimp or clams or such as tribute, I'll just notch it down as ode." "Oh," I said, trying to bow in the brackish water. "I didn't know you were a king. I certainly would have brought something." "Well," he said, paddling past me to one of the rusted buckets and fishing something foul and greenish from its depths, nearly tipping the bobbing pail over in his enthusiasm. "Mainly, I'm king because I said I was, and nobody said different. But this pier is as good as any throne room, and there are riches in every cage and pot. It's how kings are made, my brush-tailed girl. They pick a place, shove a stick in it, call themselves king, and wait to see if anyone gets angry about it. No one's gotten angry so far, and that makes the otters mine." "I see," I nodded, and wondered if this was entirely how the king of my own country began. "Well, I'm not sure what Majo means for me to do." "What are foxes good for? She means for you to steal something for me. It's not an easy thing. I hope you're up to the task. She sends me girls from time to time, but they're usually far too frail for thieving." I blushed a little, thinking of my tiny feet hidden by the sea. "What is it you want me to get for you?" Rocco looked up out of the buckets, his furry face suddenly quiet and sad, water dripping off his long whiskers like rain from stalks of wheat. He rubbed at his round brown eyes as though he'd not slept since the sea was a puddle and the moon pulled at dry land. "It's not for me," he sighed. "Not for me at all, but I need you to steal a star. And we will pick up with the tale of the loon, the otter, and the star tomorrow night." And I reach for the drink that's not there to soothe my throat. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? I certainly remember, I mean, I've said I wrote a lot of this in Japan, so I certainly remember basing a lot of the stuff in this section on Japanese and Chinese fairy tales. But I mean, I don't think that is hard to spot in any way. Well, you are a little suspicious. Would you rather travel with a ragtag crew at sea or on a spaceship? Alternatively, what's the best way to avoid getting scurvy in a long voyage? Spaceship, definitely. I've been at sea. That's fine. I've done that. I haven't been on a spaceship. So obviously citrus is how you avoid scurvy. Although it's vitamin C, and you can get that in seal blubber and a lot of very, very fresh meat if you don't cook it too much. Something I've always found fairly fascinating about that is that we knew that citrus fruits fixed it long before we knew that vitamin C fixed it. And the assumption of why the citrus worked was completely wrong. People thought that it worked because it was acidic. And so they also figured, well, vinegar is a lot cheaper than citrus, so it's sour and acidic too, so that'll probably work just as well. And a whole bunch of people got scurvy and horribly because, of course, vinegar doesn't work. But they tried all kinds of things that were pungent and acidic, assuming that that was the key factor, and it resulted in a lot of people getting scurvy before it was actually only in the very beginning of the 20th century that vitamin C was discovered, and they sort of figured it out. But obviously, the indigenous peoples in the Arctic have been living just fine for a long time, and it's the seal blubber where they get the vitamin C. But I've always found that really fascinating as far as the progression of science, understanding a thing that works without understanding why it works. And that having the effect of a lot of people having their teeth fall out and go mad. But thus is science, I suppose. Anybody else? I learned that someone figured out like 50 years before the British Navy actually did anything about it. Yeah, because citrus fruit is expensive. It's expensive even now, but particularly in Britain where you don't grow it, you have to get it from Spain. Spain doesn't like talking to Britain and never really has. It's vinegar is always going to be cheaper, and governments are always going to go for the cheaper option, even if it kills people. Speaking of, yeah, I mean, we have plenty of proof of that at the moment. How was teaching the other day? It sounded fun. Yeah, I mean, I had to do a lot of classes back to back, and I had taught the previous week too, so it was tiring. But it is fun, and I like teaching. Teaching over Zoom is weird. It's hard to sort of get that cool class discussion thing going when, everybody's just a tiny little window. But it was good. The plotting class, which is now up on my Patreon, I'd sort of distilled the whole lecture portion into an essay, and that's up there for people who couldn't get into the class or were interested. So I did a lecture the first day, and then the second part of the class was a practicum. So basically we plotted a novel. We started with a really sort of bargain basement plot and then tried to make it interesting all the way through. And that was really fun. Both of the classes did really well. Both of them had at least one idea that was just like absolutely gold. It was really interesting to see what very different stories two groups of people would come up with, and different ways to twist it. But again, that's a lot easier when you're in person. Over Zoom, people are very reticent to say anything, so they don't want to pop up. But I can't help because I've already written books. It's not helpful if I'm the one doing it. So it was hard. It's much harder to get people to, to make sure everybody's participating. So it's a real challenge teaching on Zoom. I enjoy it, but not as much as being in a room with people. So yeah, but it was really fun. I love teaching. I really do. I meant to be a teacher before I sort of backed up into being a writer. So it's always really nice to get back to that. I tend to take any teaching opportunity that comes along. Yeah. Not so much a question, but you're one of my heroes. Oh, thank you. Your style is on point. The eyeliner and the lipstick and the bangs. Thank you so much. The lipstick is a combination of some weird Korean brand that I don't know and an Urban Decay glitter over thing. The eyeliner is actually just black eyeshadow applied with an angled brush. You can see it's not winged or anything. And it's the Urban Decay Distortion palette on my eyes. And there's my little YouTube beauty blogger moment for you. When I've taught in the past, has it been cons or other places? I've taught everything. So I've taught at writers' workshops at conventions. I used to teach at the Stone Coast MFA program. I've taught at Clarion. I would love to teach at Viable Paradise or any of the other sort of big workshops, but I haven't yet. I've taught classes at universities all over the country, and lectured all around. So yeah, like I said, I tend to take it if somebody offers to let me teach something. So I taught at Shared Worlds in South Carolina, which is an amazing program if you have teen children. I highly, highly recommend looking into having them go to it. It's incredible. Yeah, so yeah, I've taught all kinds of things. Clarion's amazing. I mean, there's a reason that people are real weird about it, because it's such an intense and valuable and exciting experience. But yeah, so I teach all kinds, but unfortunately at the moment, Zoom is the only way to teach. So I'm doing a lot of Zoom, Zoom in the Zoom room. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, let me do our outro stuff. If you have a question, you can type it in while I'm saying all this crap. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon, also at Cat Valenti. It's a really good time to subscribe because there's lots of cool stuff going up. You can buy these books at your local independent bookseller. Almost all of them have online ordering. I really recommend making an effort to support them and not Amazon at the moment. Amazon will be fine. A lot of these bookstores will not. And my local bookstore in Portland, Maine is printbookstore.com, and you can absolutely order these books off that site if you want to support them or your own. You can catch up with the archive if you miss any nights at Cat Valenti Live on YouTube. Yes, bookshop.org is another great way to support those bookstores. And you can drop me a tip in the tip jar on my Instagram profile, my YouTube profile, or on my website at catherinemvalenti.com. You don't have to. These are free, my gift from me to you, but there are quite a lot of work to put together every night for 28 nights and counting, and times are extremely tight for us. So if you are moved to put something in the hat, put a penny in the hat, I will be endlessly grateful, and I will thank you in person on the next stream. Yeah, so that's it. We'll pick up with the otter tomorrow night, and I'm really grateful for you guys coming to see me and hanging out with me, listening to stories from this old ass book. Treat yourself to something nice tonight. You know, a little bit of self-care never went the wrong way. I'll see you guys at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow night. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel.